In this video, we'll be taking a look at 3 college football games happening on October 14, 2023 and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games. So 2 picks for each game, 6 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 3 college football games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Ohio State versus Purdue. The Ohio State Buckeyes make the trip to Lafayette to take on the Purdue Boilermakers on Saturday afternoon at Ross-Ades Stadium in a conference matchup. The Buckeyes will be looking to remain undefeated in the Big Ten and on the season, while the Boilermakers will try to get back on the winning track after dropping their 4th game of the season last week. The Buckeyes won their last matchup with the Boilermakers 59-31, which came at home during the 2021 season. The Buckeyes rolled through their first 3 games this year without too many issues. Ohio State took out Indiana 23-3 in the opener, then beat Youngstown State 35-7 in Game 2. After that was a 63-10 blowout win over Western Kentucky. The Buckeyes posted a nice road win over a very good Notre Dame team 17-14 in Game 4 to keep it going. Back on Saturday versus Maryland, Ohio State fell behind 7-0 early but rallied in the final 3 quarters for a 37-17 win. Quarterback Kyle McCord finished with 320 yards and 2 scores. Demonte Trayanum added 61 yards with a score off 20 carries, and Marvin Harrison Jr. had 8 catches for 163 yards and 1 touchdown. Over on the Boilermakers side, they took a tough loss to a good Fresno State team in their opener 39-35, but bounced back the next week versus Virginia Tech in a 24-17 win. Purdue would then lose the next pair of outings 35-20 versus Syracuse and 38-17 against Wisconsin before finally bagging another win 44-19 in the Illinois matchup. In the Iowa game, Purdue gave up points in each quarter on the way to a 20-14 loss. Quarterback Hudson Card finished with 247 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Devin Mockleby added 20 carries for 89 yards and a touchdown, and TJ Sheffield led the receivers with his 6 catches for 93 yards and a score. The Buckeyes got off to a very slow start at home against Maryland last week following their bye. The game started with a failed fake punt on their first possession, followed by 4 punts and a field goal before halftime. Thanks to a pick 6, the Buckeyes went into half tied with Maryland at 10 before they finally pulled away with 5 straight scoring drives in the second half. That amounted to a 27-point advantage in the final 2 quarters and a cover on the full game point spread. Ohio State started the season a bit slowly with a new quarterback leading the offense, but Kyle McCord has started to show signs of improvement and the Buckeyes have started to gain some traction offensively because of it. They may not return to the level of efficiency they had with C.J. Stroud, but they still have a top 8 offense in terms of adjusted efficiency with a top 25 mark in touchdown rate, drive efficiency, and yards per play when removing garbage time. The offense struggled a bit on the road against a top 15 defense in Notre Dame, but the Boilermakers are 75th in adjusted defensive efficiency per BCF toys and outside the top 65 in unadjusted drive efficiency, yards per play, and touchdown rate. Furthermore, they yielded an average of 37 points per game at home against Fresno State, Syracuse, and Illinois, none of which have playmakers of the level of Ohio State's. With all that said, Ohio State is a bit banged up right now with Henderson playing hurt and Harrison Jr. playing through a minor knee issue. It's amazing that they covered the Maryland game because the Terps were covering the entire game and basically Talia Tagovailoa gave that game away with a pick 6 and a poorly managed end of the first half. Card is a talented quarterback who can push the Buckeyes' defense. Despite their perfect season thus far, the Buckeyes have covered only twice in 5 tries and are 0-2 against the spread away from their home stadium. They are winless in their previous 5 games against the spread on the road dating back to last season. They covered only once in 4 tries on the road during the 2022 season. Purdue covered in their last game at home, which came against the Illinois Fighting Illini 2 weeks back. The defense kept the Boilermakers competitive throughout their game with a tough Hawkeyes squad in Iowa last week and gave them a chance to win in the final drive of the game. The Purdue defense limited their opponent to 20 or less points in 2 of their last 3 games and held the Hawkeyes to under 300 total yards last week. The Ohio State offense is averaging an impressive 50 points per game at home but drops significantly to 20 points per game average away from their home stadium. While the Buckeyes will exit Indiana with its perfect season intact, the Purdue defense will keep the Boilermakers competitive throughout the contest. This is the type of game that Ohio State win, but they just do enough to take the road game without covering it. You can look at every stat in the book, but the Buckeyes won't be as motivated to beat Purdue with Penn State coming up on October 21st. So the Purdue Boilermakers to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. With all those weapons back, even if they are banged up, I have a hard time thinking that Ohio State is going to score less than 30 points or even 25 on the road. Purdue is going to struggle to score against Iowa. Most teams do against that elite defense. Syracuse put up 35 points on Purdue on the road, but I do the Boilermakers scoring at least 20 points at home against a tough Ohio State defense because they will have their lapses of concentration as they don't have to bring their A game until they meet Penn State the following week. Over the projected total is our full game total pick. Arkansas versus Alabama. The Arkansas Razorbacks travel to Alabama to battle the 11th-ranked Crimson Tide in Southeastern Conference action on Saturday afternoon. Arkansas is 2-4 overall this season and has lost 4 straight games heading into this matchup. Alabama has now rattled off 4 straight wins after losing at home to Texas earlier this season. The Arkansas Razorbacks need a win to snap a rough 4-game losing streak. Arkansas has lost 3 straight road games. KJ Jefferson is completing 67.1% of his passes for 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Andrew Armstrong and Luke Hass have combined for 690 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns, while Isaac T. Slaw has 15 receptions. The Arkansas Razorbacks ground game is averaging 111.5 yards per contest, and A.J. Green leads the way with 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. Defensively, Arkansas is allowing 25 points and 340.7 yards per game. Jahan Thomas leads the Arkansas Razorbacks with 59 tackles. Kiwi Rose has 2.5 sacks and Dwight McGlothern has 2 interceptions. The Alabama Crimson Tide look for a 5th straight win to stay in the Southeastern Conference West race. Alabama has 16 of its last 17 home games. Jalen Milroe is completing 67.6% of his passes for 1,159 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Jermaine Burton and Isaiah Bond have combined for 661 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns, while Amory Niblack has 9 receptions. The Alabama Crimson Tide ground game is averaging 143.7 yards per contest, and Jace McClellan leads the way with 371 yards and 3 touchdowns. Defensively, Alabama is allowing 15 points and 299.5 yards per game. Caleb Downs leads the Alabama Crimson Tide with 47 tackles. Dallas Turner has 6.5 sacks, and Jalen Key has 1 interception. The Arkansas Razorbacks take on the Alabama Crimson Tide in a Southeastern Conference West matchup. The Tide are still trying to win the Southeastern Conference West Division and get a shot at the college football playoff. Despite already having a loss this season, they have already beaten 2 of the harder opponents in the division with wins over Ole Miss and the Texas Aggies, but still have several tough games ahead including Tennessee, LSU, and this game. The Razorbacks have fallen short in a few games to end up with a 2-4 record. They lost by a touchdown or less to Ole Miss, LSU, and Brigham Young University. The upside for Arkansas is after this game they have already been through the meat of their schedule and could still easily make a bowl game. This should be a good test for both teams. Alabama seems to have found its stride in the last few weeks. After losing to Texas and a sleepwalker win against USF, they reeled off wins against Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Texas Aggies. Their defense is their strongest asset, only allowing 299.5 yards per game and 15 points per game. Arkansas is quite the opposite in that, as I mentioned, they have lost some close games. Their offense averages 34 points and 332.8 yards per game. Offensively, neither team is a powerhouse, but both can score points. The Crimson Tide are riding a 15-game win streak over the Razorbacks, the last 5 of which have been by an average of 31 points per game. Alabama is 4-2 against the spread on the season, and Arkansas is 3-3 against the spread. Over their last 5 visits to Tuscaloosa, the Razorbacks have averaged just 13 points per game, so they struggle to score at Bryant-Denny. Last season's game saw the then number 2 Tide walk away with a 23-point victory, 49-26. Alabama is 3-1 against the spread in the last 4 meetings, Bulldogs. However, Alabama has struggled through some games. This line is a bit strange. Yes, it feels like both teams are heading in different directions as the Arkansas Razorbacks are piling up the losses and Alabama is finding ways to win. But this is a lot of points. All of Arkansas losses have been decided by 12 or fewer points, which includes taking LSU and Ole Miss down to the wire on the road. Alabama doesn't have the horses offensively to blow teams out and is currently 88th in total offense. The Texas Aggies had its chances last week to upset Alabama. This is a lot of points. Give me the free touchdowns. So the Arkansas Razorbacks to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. This is the lowest total put on this matchup in the last decade. The over has taken the last 2 meetings between these programs, but the last 10 have been split down the middle. However, the last 7 meetings have soared over the total placed on this one as these to have combined to average 70 points per game. The Crimson Tide alone have scored at least 41 points in each of the last 7 games against Arkansas and have scored 48 or more in 4 of the last 5. For their part, the Razorbacks have averaged 30.5 points in the last 2 meetings, scoring 35 in their last trip to Tuscaloosa. The over is 4-2 for both squads this season. Arkansas has hit the over in 7 of their last 9 games and 6 of their last 7 road games. Alabama has hit the over in 6 of their last 8 games and in 2 of their last 3 matchups against Arkansas. Alabama is a heavy favorite in this game, and for good reason. The Tide are 10-0 against Arkansas in their last 10 matchups straight up. Arkansas is playing close games this year with their biggest loss only being by 12 points. Milroe is coming off his best passing performance of the season and the Crimson Tide's passing attack is in rhythm. Arkansas defense has allowed over 30 points in 3 of the last 4 games, all losses. Expect the trends to continue on Saturday. Both of these teams will score points. Over the projected total is our full game total pick. Georgia versus Vanderbilt. 2 teams on the opposite ends of the Southeastern Conference East standings battle on Saturday when the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs travel to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores. Georgia just flexed their muscles against number 20 Kentucky. The Bulldogs won 51-13 at home as 14.5-point favorites. Vanderbilt lost their 5th straight game by going down to Florida 38-14 on the road as 18-point dogs. When these teams met last season, Georgia won 55-0. Georgia comes into this game with a 6-0 record overall, but this is a spot they can't let them down. They are no doubt the better team in this game, but weird things have happened in college football. In the last game against Kentucky, the defense gave up only 13 points, while the offense scored 51 points. Carson Beck completed 28 of his 35 passes for 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Georgia is averaging 41 points while their defense is giving up 13 points per game. It's another down year for Vanderbilt, and they currently sit with a 2-4 record overall. Vanderbilt scored 21 points against Missouri, but the defense gave up 38 points, and that led to the defeat. Ken Seals completed 20 of his 31 passes for 259 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Vanderbilt is averaging 29 points while their defense is giving up 34 points per game. The offense is ranked 73rd in the league, while the defense is ranked 118th. Starting quarterback A.J. Swan is dealing with an elbow injury, and he's questionable for this game. Both teams have a dismal record against the spread coming into this matchup. Georgia is 2-4 and Vanderbilt is an awful 0-7. The Commodores, primarily because they are in Southeastern Conference team, have been favored in 3 contests against out-of-conference opponents and dogs in the rest. In this game against Georgia, the Commodores are looking to get their first cover with a generous 31.5 points to their credit. Georgia's defense has shut out the offense of Vanderbilt for 2 seasons in a row. Furthermore, the Commodores haven't scored a touchdown against this defense since the 4th quarter of the 2018 game. Unfortunately for the Commodores, the Bulldogs have challenged themselves to shut them out once again. As mentioned earlier, the Commodores score almost 2/3 of their touchdowns through the air. That means they will be challenging the stout passing defense of the Bulldogs. Georgia allows a mere 166 yards through the air per game. Peach Bowl and National Championship game MVP Javon Bullard dangerously lurks in the secondary, ready to pounce on errant passes. Bullard had injured his ankle earlier in the season but returned for action in last week's game against Kentucky. Georgia has averaged averaged 48 points in 4 of 6 games this season. Additionally, last week, against a nationally ranked team, they scored 51. They are averaging more than 5 touchdowns a game utilizing its efficient offense that ranks third in the nation with a 56.4% third down conversion rate. This allows the offense to attain an impressive 71 plays per game. 31.5 is a ton of points for two Southeastern Conference teams playing each other. To cover that kind of chalk, the favored team has to have both ability and incentive. After Georgia only scored 27 points in their one road game this season, they have the incentive to show they can continue to get better, as Coach Kirby Smart says, and dominate someone on the road. Add to that a defensive incentive to remain perfect against Vanderbilt, and you have a formula for a possible ugly one-sided game. Vanderbilt has given up at least 36 points in each of their last 5 games, and those opponents were nowhere near as good as Georgia. UNLV dropped 40 on Vanderbilt, and Wake Forest put up 36. If Georgia wants to, they can hang 60 on the Commodores. Georgia's quarterback Carson Beck has found his footing replacing Stetson Bennett. Georgia's massive offensive line has only allowed 3 sacks over 6 games, and Beck has all day to find his receivers and elite tight end. Vanderbilt's best defensive player, Derek Wright, is likely out for this game with a high ankle sprain. This is a tough matchup. To lose your top player in the secondary, Georgia will take advantage and run up the score. This is a monster number to lay, but it is the only play in this game. So the Georgia Bulldogs to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Georgia looks to drop an anchor on a Vanderbilt team that hasn't been able to stop anybody on defense since Southeastern Conference started. Vanderbilt has allowed 36 or more points in each of the past 5 games, failing to cover in all 7 this season. Things don't figure to improve against a Georgia side that just punished a very good and ranked Kentucky team by a 51-13 score last weekend. The Commodores do have some offensive weapons, and they have scored 20 or more points in 6 of games, but Vanderbilt scored a season-low 14 points at Florida last week, and it's doubtful it gets much going against Georgia's sturdy defense. The Dogs have allowed 13 points per game this season, which sounds great but is very uncharacteristic for this D. In fact, Georgia is allowing 16 points per game in 3 Southeastern Conference games. Vanderbilt will likely get on the board with a double-digit point total, but you have to figure the Bulldogs are going to at least get in the 40s if not the 50s, doing most of the heavy lifting. Vanderbilt has no defense to speak of, and quarterback Carson Beck and the Georgia offense should continue to build momentum. Vanderbilt is a team of trends, and I plan on following them. It is well documented that Vanderbilt is 0-7 against the spread, but they also have gone over the total in all 7 games this season. If you faded Vanderbilt and took the over every game, you would have 0 losses halfway through the season. This is because Vanderbilt cannot stop anyone. It is not because of their 12th best in the Southeastern Conference scoring offense. If UNLV can score 40 on Vanderbilt, then Georgia can score 60 on their own. With all that being said, Vanderbilt still averages 29 points per game and scored at least 14 or more against all their Southeastern Conference opponents. There will be more than enough points here to send this way past the total. Over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.